All right, so we're going to be starting our React Indie segment for this evening that we do every single Tuesday. This video is from Ardetha, who is a very, very prolific content creator that makes history of videos, which is actually a fairly popular genre of videos in the DBD community. But Ardethas are particularly good, so now more than ever, hit that link that just showed up above my head in the Twitch chat. And if you're on YouTube in the future, this will be down in the description below. And make sure you like and subscribe to this creator, because that is how you support the official release. And if you do not do that, you are a big jerk, and I hate you. This video today is talking about the downfall of DBD's first killer meta, and I have heard some things about this, about some perks that I did not expect to be good back in the day. There's some that probably come to mind, like Brutal, Unrelenting, etc. So Homie's probably going to cover those. Yeah, imagine that, a realm where those are good. Including Enduring. Enduring was also good for a very specific reason that Homie will probably cover. So yeah, wild stuff, wild stuff. So cue in, get your popcorn, get cozy, and let's begin.
Recently, Dead by Daylight has been having meta shakeups far more frequently than it did for most of its life. Sure, DBD's metas do change at a snail's pace when compared to other popular PvP games like
I will say, before he even gets too far into that, like, it used to be that way. DBD used to have metas that would last for years and years and years. I would say in the past couple of years, behavior's actually been pretty good and pretty attentive to the meta. So like, I appreciate that. I appreciate that effort that they're clearly putting in more effort instead of just leaving, like, you know, old Dead Hard in the game for like years and years and years and shit like that. Like, I am way, way, way happier that they actually change stuff now.
Overwatch, League of Legends, and Smite, but if we're strictly comparing modern DBD with old DBD, the difference is not.
Why did you use the same logo twice?
If we think back to the last year or two, there are clear and drastic rises and falls in certain metas that have come and gone already. There was the Dead Man Switch in Pain Resonance meta, then the Bran Overcharge and Eruption meta.
If you survived this, if you played Survivor during this meta, you are entitled to financial compensation. This was the most brainless, me no think, me win the game for free stuff that has ever existed, period. We can have different arguments about like which killer meta was the strongest, but in terms of like strength versus effort, this was the most brainless, effortless crap that has ever entered this game. This meta was so stupid, so dumb. Me dry kick Jen, me win for free. It was the most brainless, easy peasy thing in the universe. I almost quit. I didn't play Survivor off stream during this whole meta. When this was meta, I didn't play Survivor off stream basically at all. It didn't matter. Best friend, love interest. I said no. Not happening. Not for anybody will I suffer through this crap. This was stupid. This was dumb. Absolutely dumb. I am so glad this is gone.
Then Eruption got nerfed and it became just Overbrine, then Surge rose up. It's actually astonishing to see how quickly some things have been changing. This is mainly because meta changes in DBD typically took multiple years at a time. Take Ruin for instance. That perk was not only meta, but core for over 5 entire years.
It's so funny because like, before skill check ruin, or like after skill check ruin, or was the one where you just like walk at them, that's also kind of lazy. At least the, you know, you had the juxtaposition that like it was a totem you could pop, at least until old Undying was the thing, and then like Undying made it really complicated and stupid as well. But like it was also kind of a lazy perk. They just I walk at you and now like the gen regresses. It's like it is also kind of lazy.
But on the topic of perks taking too long to be changed, there is one meta that also took far too long to get changed, and it was so long ago that most people have forgotten about it. And that is DBD's first ever killer meta, Brutal Strength and Enduring.
Yeah.
This is proper OG territory we're getting into now.
Weird, huh?
To set the scene for DBD's first ever killer meta, we're gonna have to roll all the way back to DBD's release day, the 14th of June 2016.
I get it's for like stylistic reasons, but you ever just want to like reach up to like Ardetha's videos and just wipe that smeary off? like I get it's for like stylistic reasons, but like it feels like I feel like I have astigmatism. Like I need to like, or something smeared all over the screen. Like I'm like, can we like can like it kind of makes it hard to look at sometimes.
This was so long ago that there was no Sadako, Nemesis or Doctor, so Call of Brine, Eruption and Overcharge were off the menu. No Deathslinger or Pinhead, so no Dead Man Switch and Pain Resonance, alongside no Hag, and therefore no ruin. Yep, we're going so far back that we're no ruin. Yep,
Did the homie make a mistake here? Hold on.
Overcharge were off the menu. No death sling or a pinhead, so no dead man switch and pain.
Okay, chat. Who's teachable? Who's teachable is pain res? Because it's not pinhead. Oops. 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 It's not pinheads. Yep, it's artists. Oops. Homie made a mistake. Oopsies.
Resonance alongside no hag and therefore no ruin. Yep, we're going so far back that we're predating ruin here. In fact,
yeah, that flew by. I was like, wait a minute, and then I rewound and I was like,
Wraith and Hillbilly. So in terms of making a perk build, you were obviously very limited as you only had their 9 teachables to pick from, alongside the neutral perks like Noed and Unrelenting. That being said, something that's a little less obvious is that the killer's needs were different at that point in time, as the base game itself was different, people's playstyles were different.
Yeah, Gift of Pain's like not bad, but it's just not exceptional at the same time.
For starters, the Hillbilly was flat out better than he is now, due to not having the overheat mechanic and also having stronger add-ons.
Oh yeah, Billy used to be great.
The Wraith was significantly weaker than
Wraith was so terrible. Wraith didn't have any lunge speed, no base kit windstorm. This character was literally bottom 3 in the game. It was
his modern day counterpart. To start the list of reasons as for why that was the case, there used to be a mechanic called Lightburn, which allowed survivors to stun the Wraith for an almighty 4 seconds by simply pointing a flashlight at him while...
I still think they shouldn't have I don't think they shouldn't have gotten rid of the Lightburn mechanic. I think they should have just like kept it for the higher tier killers while removing it for lower tier killers. I still think that, I think removing the Lightburn mechanic is sad. It added more cool counterplay and like interaction between the killer and survivor. That was pretty neat. So the removal of gameplay kind of sucks there, but that's all I'll say about it.
While he was cloaked, it didn't even have to be in his eyes. Point it anywhere at him, even behind him, and he'd get stunned. He also used to move way slower while cloaked and shimmered a lot more, so he was low-key not invisible in the slightest. Plus, his audio wasn't reduced.
I forgot about that. He's right. I forgot about the fact that he wasn't even like truly invisible, because like right now, if he's past a certain like distance, he's just invisible, like flat out. But he used to shimmer permanently. I forgot about that. That is also really stupid.
Anywhere near as much while cloaked either.
Thank you, Scout. I appreciate that.
Hear him coming from a mile away, alongside his add-ons being weaker or just straight up missing some. Not that he ever got to use most of them though, since back then he didn't get that post-uncloak speed boost like he does nowadays. Instead, it used to be tied to the Windstorm add-ons, and as you can guess, this meant that just about every Wraith used Windstorm add-ons every single
We always
match.
do 3 a night.
In fact, the list of changes to the Wraith goes on even further than that. His bell sound and cloaking whoosh sound used to be map wide, but still directional, so survivors would be getting constant updates on what he was doing and his exact location without even looking at him.
So like my first character that got me into the game was Myers, right? And then like the second DLC I ever bought was Pig. So obviously I had a thing going. Like I really liked stealth characters. So I also played Wraith as my tertiary back in the day. It was such a struggle. It was such pain. I remember my first DC ever. My first rage quit ever was on Old Ormond, which was the strongest map in the game. It was like Garden of Joy levels of stupid, if not worse, because it was bigger and more loops and stronger loops. Playing Wraith, and I was getting DS Unbreakable, because old DS Unbreakable was just a lose-lose combo. I was getting DS'd off gens, I was getting DS'd off of like people forcing hook grabs. Like I just rage quit while playing Wraith because I just couldn't do anything. It was sending me back to the pits of pain that I have experienced before.
And he couldn't even kick gens or break pallets while invisible. That's right, Wraith players would have to uncloak, break the pallet, and then recloak completely manually. The Trapper was also overall noticeably weaker, as he didn't get haste for placing traps like he does nowadays. He took longer to set traps.
Wraith is Sparta. You are absolutely incorrect. That is absolutely not a true take. That I mean, saying that's not factual at all. Wraith is a very solid killer nowadays. They put him mid to low B. Wraith is not bad at all. Ardetha's not even bottom 10, much less bottom 5. That is an incorrect take. The DS rework will bring back the old DS Unbreakable meta? No, it will not. They've learned. They're smarter than that now. They're smarter
and had weaker add-ons, alongside some other small changes that we can discuss some other time.
He's just have one killer? No, he's not. What are you talking about, Sparta? He has incredible map mobility. He's a good stealth killer because he actually, you know, disappears at long range now. He's very, very good at enacting all kinds of slowdown perks like Pop, Overcharge, Call the Brine. He does have a lunge now as well. Like, no. You were massively undervaluing that character.
The biggest factor in this story would be the differences in the base game itself. Maps as a whole were bigger, there were far more pallets spawning in general, pallets were in safer locations, they took much longer to break, survivors vaulted faster, killers vaulted slower,
yeah, that too,
and survivors could straight up teleport
resources
at pallets due to something called pallet vacuum,
but that's like,
which was as unfair as it sounds.
Not very high,
the final factor that contributed to the different meta was how the perks themselves differed to their current day counterparts. Enduring was pretty much the same in terms of effectiveness. The only real change that it ever got was some back-end technical changes where they changed the way it reduced the stun duration, but the end result was almost identical. The heavy hitter was pre-nerf brutal strength, which sat at an almighty 40% faster pallet break speed compared to today's measly 20%.
Yeah, so if you DS on somebody with Enduring, you just
since brutal strength is a percentage-based perk.
You know what's funny? I remember there was one patch where it broke and it did it again. And it was the funniest stuff ever. You're just like, people would just like DS you because DS was still meta back then. And it was just, and you would just like catch up to them like literally immediately. It's kind of like now, like current DS, but it was just back in the day. It was funny.
It is influenced heavily by that initial starting value, and as pallet breaking originally took so much longer, that old 40% was so much more impactful than 40% would be today. Just to compare, here's a side-by-side comparison of old brutal strength and new brutal strength. As you can see, they're pretty much neck and neck. Now let's compare those speeds without brutal strength equipped. The difference is astronomical. It's not edited, it's not a joke, it genuinely took 3 entire seconds to break one single pallet in this game. While that
oh, that's terrible. That's awful. And there were so many pallets back then. So many pallets. That sounds, how did people play killer back in the day? I don't understand.
Base speed being increased by 40% alone would probably be enough to warrant a brutal strength meta. We're still not done yet. I already briefly mentioned the increased pallet count in the past, and the difference was actually pretty big.
Yeah, because somebody just had a chainsaw.
The exact number of pallet spawns hasn't been published in a few years, but going from memory, each map had a maximum of around 10 more pallets than they do nowadays, which was around 35.
Yep.
And we're still not done yet. The pallets often spawned in more safe
That's
loops.
What's funny. A lot of people are like, you know, a lot of people are like, I want Hawkins back. I want Hawkins back. And like, they just like were unaware of like old DBD map design, because Hawkins hasn't been modified as it's been dropped back into the game. So it's just kind of like an archaic view into old DBD map design where it comes to like really high pallet counts or really good loops. Like, and you're just like, oh man.
Than they do nowadays too, so there was a slimmer chance of being able to mind game a lot of these additional pallets, and the killers would often find themselves forced to break a large majority of them. So if we take the original 3-second pallet break time and times that by 35, that means killers could find themselves spending up to 1 minute and 45 seconds locked in the pallet break animation per match.
Yep.
Considering most matches didn't even make the 10-minute mark, this was a pretty big chunk.
Yep.
Also keep in mind that generators were faster back then, and all of your favorite slowdown perks didn't exist either. Of course, that is the absolute worst case scenario, assuming literally every single possible pallet spawned and that the killer broke literally every single one, but it shows how quickly that time would rack up. Due to all of those reasons, brutal strength was not only meta back then, but outright core, meaning you practically had to use it to stand a chance at winning against any competent survivors. But what about enduring?
DBD was better though.
Surprisingly, enduring was less of a defensive pick like brutal strength where you're just desperately trying to get by, and was more of an offensive pick to synergize with the pallet disrespecting playstyle many killers had at the time. You see, killers kind of had to take any possible chance of landing a hit that they could get, and would find themselves regularly risking a stun for a possible, not guaranteed, hit.
And remember, this is before pallet validation. So like it really was kind of like a 50-50 if you swung through that pallet. Like like it really was a 50-50. Like you swing through, like it's entirely possible that you would just like hit them. Especially before they had like dedicated servers and all that. Like it was way more. I still think in a lot of scenarios, it is still, I think say most scenarios I would say, it's still better to like swing and get stunned than not even attempt, right? But like back in the day, it really was like, I feel like 60%, not even 60, I feel like 40 to 60% of the time you'd swing through battle, you'd like hit somebody anyway, even if they like timed it right, so yeah.
One of the core factors for this was the previously mentioned pallet teleportation survivors were able to do, otherwise called pallet vacuum, where even if they misplayed it a loop and found themselves unable to reach the pallet safely, the killer would lunge, they'd be perfectly on track for a hit, and poof. Survivor magically appears on the opposite side of the loop, out of harm's way, and the pallet is now dropped. This is because pallets used to have a much bigger interaction range than they do nowadays, and while today, when you press the pallet drop button, you'll continue to run through and then drop the pallet behind you, back then...
That's why one of the best like techs you can have is Survivor, just a little like... a little match view in middle section in here for you guys on the Survivor end of things. That's why you see survivors, especially when you're playing killer, they'll run past the pallet and then drop it like super far out, and they suction themselves back into the pallet, because what they do is they run all the way up. If you look at my cursor, you run all the way up to the edge of this interaction zone where they just barely have prompt, and they suck themselves back in and suddenly stun you. So, like, that's something you should definitely be doing as Survivor, is not throwing the pallet, like, here in the middle of the red zone, but, like, at the edge right here if you're trying to go for a stun. So, there's your fun takeaway for today.
Drop button, you'll continue to run through and then drop the pallet behind you. Back then, it didn't queue up the drop like that. Instead of waiting for you to be in the correct position, it would instead just instantly teleport you to the right position and perform the dropping animation immediately. Since the interaction zone extended so far out, the teleport was quite sizable and resulted in many immune hits. Just like the interaction zone, the stun zone extended further out too. Not quite as ridiculously far as the interaction zone, but definitely further than what we're used to in modern DBD. This combination of elements resulted in many chases where what would have been a perfectly fair hit turned into the survivor teleporting away and the killer getting stunned at the same time. Since stuns were, and still are, 2 seconds long, if a killer had to wait for a 2-second stun and then perform a 3-second pallet break animation, it meant that each pallet would cost them 5 entire seconds of time, which again would result in even more wasted time. That being said, killers weren't entirely the victims in this situation. There was a second reason for the enduring pick, which was completely disrespecting pallets and lunging through every single one to abuse the peer-to-peer connection and get some unfair hits on any survivors who had poor connection. Think how nowadays you get hit through windows that you fully vaulted and completely cleared, but apply that to pallet stuns. If the survivor had a good connection, then this would rarely, if ever, work. But on those survivors with poor connection, it was another possible source for killers to get hits. And in more extreme cases, since in the P2P days the killer would always be the host, if the killer had a particularly bad connection, or even decided to start lag switching, this could be done to pretty much any survivor every single hit. If you play DBD, then I'm sure you've encountered a lag switcher at least once before, whether it be on killer or survivor, and it's absolutely insane how unfair it is. But back then, it was a million times worse.
You guys remember Jake Cheater from the other day? From yesterday? His name was Jake Cheater, and every time I would enter chase with him, he wasn't playing Jake by the way, he was playing Quentin for whatever reason. Every single time I would enter chase, somebody just start red barring and just like stuttering all over the place. I hated Jake Cheater. He was in fact a cheater.
Take this example from Behavior's first ever official DBD tournament. The
and
killer
activates
his lag switch and the survivors are completely unable to move. Meanwhile, the nurse can move around freely like nothing happened. While they're all frozen, the nurse downs them all one by one, and when they turn the lag switch back off, they've all already been downed. And the killer didn't even get kicked from the tournament for it. If you want to learn more about that, check out my video on that absolute joke of a tournament linked in the description. As a result, Brutal Strength and Enduring would find themselves as not only the first ever killer meta, but also core perks that were an absolute must pick. As time rolled by, more and more killers got released. The Huntress, the Nurse, the Hag, Michael Myers, and the Doctor. And while all of these killers brought their own unique perks to the table, the Brutal and Enduring meta stayed firm. Of course, as you may know, the release of the Hag immediately saw Ruin joining alongside that meta, forming a holy trinity of perks which killers pretty much had to pick. No ifs, no buts. The story doesn't end there though, as with the release of the aforementioned Halloween chapter, we not only got Myers, but Laurie Strode too, alongside her utterly game-breaking perk Decisive Strike, which might well be the single most controversial perk in video game history. I have a whole video dedicated to that too.
Deadhard would like to have a word with you. Diaz also yes, but Deadhard would also like to have a word with you. Deadhard would like to be included in the conversation.
Which will also be linked in the description. With the release of Laurie and therefore Decisive Strike, we saw Enduring stand even stronger than it already did, as it became a predominantly defensive pick, with killers picking it as a means to defend themselves against Decisive Strike, since Enduring actually used to work on all stuns instead of just pallet stuns like nowadays. From here on out, most of Enduring's story becomes strongly intertwined with Decisive Strike, which again I already discussed in depth in the Decisive Strike video linked below. Killers would continue to be locked into this meta for over an entire year, and killer players were sick of effectively having one single perk slot, especially since 2 of the 3 meta perks had been the go-to since literally the day the game released. Things needed to change. So 1 year and 3 months after the game's release, on the 14th of September 2017, on patch 1.7.0, killers would get their biggest buff so far. Buff: increase the base pallet break speed by 15%, and in return, Brutal Strength would receive a compensatory nerf. Nerf: halved Brutal Strength's effectiveness from 40% to 20%. And with that, Brutal Strength went from an absolutely core, must-pick perk to just a perk.
A perk
not
of all
meta,
time.
not awful, just a perk. Enduring's downfall, however, was much longer and more of a gradual fall off instead of a flick of a switch. There were tons of factors contributing to it.
I love Enduring's icon.
Detection improving,
it's a very
the
cool
removal
icon.
of pallet vacuum, Decisive Strike's downfall, playstyle differences, other perk choices to pick from. And again, Enduring is still a fine perk today. It's not great, but definitely not bad at all. And Ruin, I think we all know how that went.
Yeah.
If not, then you know what video to watch next.
I don't know. I think it's like it's very interesting to look at the history of the game and where the meta has been. And I think that's like, I think it shows you how well we're eating good. You know? Like, I think we're in a positive zone when it comes to like the state of the game. Right? Like, if something's actually like, you know, OP or dumb or the meta's getting stale, behavior is like very, very quick to change it. Even if very, very quick means like a few months, like, you guys were saying in this video, stuff stayed this way for like year and 3 months, 2 years. Deadhard was in the game for years and years before they changed it. It's like, those days are dead. Those days are gone. If there's something that's dumb in the game and it's mutually agreed upon for the most part with a majority that, you know, things are stupid, they do get changed now. So I don't know. It's kind of weird to hear like all these content creators, you know, come out and be like, DBD's in the worst state it's ever been. It's the most boring the game's ever been. And I don't ever want to play this game anymore. And it's like, I don't know. I feel like we're out of the dark ages almost, you know? We're out of the dark ages of like over Bran Eruption dominating everything. And then like DS Unbreakable Deadhard dominating everything, right? Like behavior goes out of their way to change things in a relatively quick time, compared to leaving it in the game for years and years. So like, I don't know. I'm pretty happy with that. I will take things being changed in like 3 to 6 months over like the olden days where things would stay broken in the game for like years and years. And I think it's like, not to sound like a, you know, old man shouting at the sky here, but I feel like part of this is like some of you joined the game during this era of DBD where like things do get changed relatively quickly, so you want things changed even faster because you're used to like the 3 to 6 months change cycle. But like those of us who played before that are like, thank goodness you're changing anything at all. Thank you for changing that, because we used to have to deal with for years when it was broken. So I'm just thankful. So maybe that's my you know, old man shouting at the sky take, is like, it used to be way worse, so I'm happy. And some of you have not lived through the era of like, oh, that perk's broken, time to deal with that for 2 years straight. Hey Nicholas, it's good to see you. We're just talking about how like DBD, like, you know, actually changes their meta now instead of leaving it the way it is for egregiously long periods of time. So yeah, I'm happy that the meta changes and changes fairly often. So